everyone. Welcome to episode 604 of the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. I'm talking about, of course, Monster Kid Radio. You know what it is. You wouldn't be listening to this unless you knew what it was. You have to look up Monster Kid Radio to find me. And I'm glad you did, because I've got a pretty fun show lined up this week. I'm your writer, host, producer, Derek M. Cook. Got some announcements to make, some plans that are coming together, some things I want to tell you about. Before we get into this week's topic, this week's discussion, first of all, I want to thank everybody who has reached out to me by email regarding my fiance being part of the show and incorporating Beth into the proceedings. So there's no Beth this week. This week she is taking a week off from things and she's got some of her own projects she's working on. But every time somebody sends me a message saying Beth's a great addition to the show, they appreciate her input, her insight, whatever, I always send that to her. And I will continue to do that anytime somebody has anything, well, I was going to say nice to say about my fiance, but, you know, that sounded like I was challenging you to say something not nice, and I don't want to hear that. But anyway, thank you for all of that. Also, I have some other emails that I'm going to go over in a future episode. I'm going to sit on those. If you have any emails or feedback or voicemails or anything you want to share about the show, I'd love to incorporate that in a future episode. Please consider writing in to me at monsterkidradio@gmail.com or call and leave a voicemail at 360-524-2484. I'll go over that again at the end of the show. I do want to start doing more feedback here on the show. I feel like that's something that we don't have a lot of, and I'm not sure why that is. It just kind of is, but I would love to do more feedback on the show, but I can only do that if I have you sending me the feedback. So please consider starting up some conversations with us via feedback. That would be amazing. Now, one thing that I do want to mention briefly, because it's not monster specific technically, I do want to let you know about an upcoming event that is happening in the Portland, Oregon area. I'm talking about Fan Expo. This is the comic book convention formerly known as Wizard World, and I'm really excited to be going. Yes, I've been sick and everything, and I don't want to dwell on all that. And I will be taking all the appropriate precautions, and I do know that the convention takes health and safety very seriously as well. But here's my experience, my history with Wizard World and Fan Expo Portland. This is a nationwide thing. These turn up in various parts of the country. It's not Portland specific, but it is something that's happened in Portland for a while now, and I've always enjoyed going. Sometimes I would go to be a panelist. Sometimes I would go with my friend Tom Doffel. Sometimes I would go to support my friend Sean Hode, an author that would a lot of times appear at these conventions. Sean, don't know if you're listening, but you are. You know, I'm thinking about you, man. I know you've got your things going on. So anyway, I'm excited about Fan Expo, and before everything shut down because of the pandemic a few years ago, I was set to be part of the show. I had submitted some panels to them, and they accepted. We were going to do a live MKR, and going to do some of the live stuff as well. It was just going to be a good time, and then everything shut down because of the pandemic. Well, I got reached out to last year by somebody who was working at Fan Expo saying, you know, we're bringing it back. You were a panelist before. You were scheduled to be a panelist again. Would you like to be a panelist coming up? And I thought, heck yeah, I would. So I submitted some panels. Looks like we are going to be doing a live recording of Monster Kid Radio with some familiar voices you've heard in the past. Going to be on the show with us for that as well. But I'm super stoked because I decided to finally sit down and throw some words down on something that I've been wanting to write for a very, very, very long time, for at least the past 15 years, if not longer. I'm going to be launching a book. I'm going to be launching a superhero novel, book 1, in what I'm calling the 6-week rotation series. Going to be a ton of books if everything goes my way and I can make it happen. That's the plan. A whole bunch of books, all set in a shared original superhero universe. These are superheroes of my design. Rare exception. I don't think you're going to see any of the ones that were created by people like Mike Mirasitz, who is a partner of mine, until a later book. But bottom line is, I'm super, super excited to be launching on the back burner Solemn Judgment #1, the superhero novel set in the 6-week rotation superhero universe, I suppose you could call it. I really need to figure out the best way to say that so it rolls off my tongue a little more smoothly. But I'm really excited because I'm going to be part of Authors Alley this year at Fan Expo here in Portland, Oregon. I'm going to be launching my book. There will be copies of the book available for sale there. Now, what I'll be selling there is a convention exclusive with a very specific cover designed by myself and Joseph Schultz. Friend of the show, Joe, helped me design and tweak and refine the book cover for this convention exclusive. Now, if I have any copies of the book available for sale after the convention, then we can talk about getting one of those out to you. But in the short term, the only way you get your hands on a copy of this book, this novel, on the back burner, Solemn Judgment #1, will be if you attend Fan Expo in February. It's happening the third weekend of February. I'm going to be in Authors Alley. Like I said, I'm super excited about this. It's happening in Portland, Oregon. Let's see, let me get you the exact dates. February 17th through the 19th in the Oregon Convention Center. I don't know what else to tell you other than I'm thrilled. I'm excited to see this particular writing project happen. It's something, like I said, I've been wanting to do for over 15 years, if not longer. So to actually throw those superhero words down, it fills me with so much happiness and joy and satisfaction. And lest you think I'm leaving the monsters behind, I'm not. Solemn Judgment, as a series of superhero novels, is a supernatural superhero storyline. It's a series, it's a team of supernaturally gifted superheroes fighting supernatural evil. There's demons, there's magic, there's Egyptology, there's all sorts of weird, wonky, magical stuff happening in this. And I just, I'm excited, and I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to kind of gush a little bit about it here. Yeah, there's going to be other celebrity guests at Fan Expo. Ron Perlman will be there, Katie Sackhoff, Sam Raimi will be there, Brent Spiner, Anson Mount, William Shatner, Brent Spiner, did I already say his name? I think Jonathan Frakes is lined up to be there as well. There's a Back to the Future reunion happening. Bruce Campbell will be there. A whole bunch of folks are going to be there. Granted, I'm going to be there too. And no, I don't appear on the same part of the website as they do. When it comes to the guests, you have to look me up in Author Alley. But I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes, or you can go straight to fanexpohq.com/FanExpoPortland, or just look up Fan Expo online, look for the Portland event, or follow the link in the show notes. I'm not the only author that's going to be there, and I'm not the only podcaster that's going to be there as well. It looks like that S.A. Bradley, who is a fellow Rondo Award-nominated podcaster, is going to be there as well as part of Authors Alley. He's promoting some of his books, which will be pretty cool. I'll be doing some panels, like I said, a live Monster Kid radio panel, and then some writing style panels as well that I'll probably record for my Monster Kid writer, social media, projects, websites, YouTube channels, whatever. But if you're going to be out there, I'd love to meet you. I'd love to say hi. We can talk monster movies. We can talk superhero novels. We can talk about whatever. But I'd love to meet you. And Beth has agreed to be my booth babe, which, now that I say that out loud, I don't know if I'm comfortable saying that. That sounds a little demeaning, but my fiance is babe and she'll be at my booth, so, Anyway, what do we talk about? What's happening? Gosh. Let's talk about this week on the show. Let's get back to Monster Kid Radio business. I announced this on Facebook. As soon as I lined it up, Robert Kelly from Record All Monsters is joining me this week to talk about a Mario Bava film. I don't talk about Mario Bava films as often as I should here on the show. The man, he's an artist. The work that he is able to put on screen with nothing other than lights and color is amazing. And I cannot wait for you to hear the conversation that I had with Robert Kelly about the 1965 film Planet of the Vampires. I have a very, weird history with this movie, how I avoided it for some reason or other for way too long. I'm just really excited to share that conversation with you. It just happened the other day with Robert. I appreciate him taking time out of his busy life and his own productions going on over there at Record All Monsters to talk with me about Planet of the Vampires. It's a raw recording, meaning I'm not editing it. You're just getting it as it was. Because one of my favorite things that happens here on Monster Kid Radio is when I start talking to people about monster movies, the more I talk to them, the more we become friends, right? We just become friends. We find common interests beyond the monster movies, and some real camaraderie. That happens. I think you hear it whenever I talk to anybody here on the show. Robert's one of those guys where, and I say this during the recording, and I think I've said it in previous recordings with him as well, if he and I lived anywhere near each other, nothing would get done. There'd be no Monster Kid Radio. There'd be no Record All Monsters. There'd be no Solemn Judgment books or Mark Temple stories or any of the stuff that he's working on, because he and I would get together and just watch monster movies together. Maybe talk about it, but wouldn't even bother pulling out the recorder because we're just a couple of dudes who love monster movies and retro media. The conversation we have about Planet of the Vampires, it does stray. It does kind of wander all over the place, because that's what happens when you get a couple of monster kids talking about their favorite topic. And Robert even convinced me to bring a feature back to this episode of Monster Kid Radio. It wasn't planned. I don't know if he meant to ambush me with it. I'm glad he did, because I had a grand time playing a round of the... I'm just going to make you wait until you hear it in the episode, which we're going to get to the rest of here in a second. Of course, we've got Mark Matzke's Beta Capsule review and Kenny's look at famous monsters of Filmland. Let's roll into those, and we'll get to Robert and Planet of the Vampires all right after this.
Here he is. Watch out, for here is a superhuman with the strength of 100 men. No one and nothing seems able to stop him. Invincible, invulnerable. Argo Man, the fantastic Superman. But even he had his Achilles heel, a beautiful woman's kiss.
Kill each other. Kill each other.
Argo Man, the fantastic Superman.
Kill each other.
A man gifted with such extraordinary powers that ordinary men were helpless to cope with him. Everyone and everything was pitted against him, from hired killers to the most diabolical inventions of modern science. The world's most beautiful women vied for his favors, or the chance to kill him.
Kill each other.
Argo Man, the fantastic Superman. Here is a picture which will take you on a journey out of time, carry you on a crest of thrills and laughter from start to finish. Be sure to see this Superman power. Don't miss it.
How did he die, man?
Well, Dr. Pepper signed the certificate natural causes, but I should have thought from the look of the poor fellow that he died of fright.
This is a frightened village. Here, it is wiser to close your ears to a scream in the night. In this place, even familiar things take on an odd and terrifying significance. A funeral moves under the cloak of night, but no one inquires who has died, nor why the corpses are dispatched with such desperate haste. Starring Peter Cushing as the parson who knew every secret of the night creatures. Yvonne Romaine and Oliver Reed as two young people who loved in the shadow of terror.
I've always been respectful to you, haven't I? But I've had to keep my real feelings to myself until now.
Patrick Allen as the courageous Captain Collier, who sailed the seven seas in search of danger and found it in The Night Creatures.
Live from the Land of Light in Nebula M78, home of the mighty Ultra Heroes, it's Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review. A businessman named Sato stumbles home after a long night of drinking. The last thing his inebriated mind expects is to be greeted by his family with the words, "Who are you?" But that's precisely what happens as the 47th episode of Ultra 7 begins. It's not only Sato's family with amnesia, no one in their entire apartment building recognizes him. His despair turns to panic when he sees alien life forms lurking about, and he quickly calls the Ultra Guard on a public phone. Before his call can be dismissed, Dan hears something in the background, a signal that they had already been searching for in the apartment's vicinity. Dan and Furuhashi are deployed to investigate, and they locate Sato's wife, who positively identifies her husband on the recording of the call. But then she drops the bombshell that Sato never came home that night, and his whereabouts are unknown. The Ultra Guardsmen conduct a nighttime sweep of the building, and moments after they observe the buildings rearranging themselves, they are attacked by a growing swarm of aliens. Escaping their assailants, they discover Sato's real apartment building deep in an underground cavern, and they discover Sato being held in a container. Before they can get him to safety, more alien shapeshifters appear, revealing both their ability to look exactly like everyone in Sato's building and their intentions to overthrow planet Earth. When Sato and Furuhashi are flash frozen, only Dan's ability to become Ultra 7 can save the day. Who Are You is the final standalone episode of Ultra 7, and as such, it exemplifies the many things the series did so well. Location shooting was a staple of Ultra 7, which grounded the stories in the real world. And here in episode 47, it's the world of the concrete urban housing complex that provides the setting and context for a story about being forgotten in a sea of familiar faces. The highlight of episode 47, at least for many Ultraman fans, is the guest starring appearance of Akiji Kobayashi as Sato. Kobayashi is remembered fondly as Captain Toshio Muramatsu of the Science Special Search Party, becoming the standard by which all captains would be measured in succeeding series. Here, Kobayashi shows great range, conveying drunkenness, desperation, and bumbling charm to such a degree that viewers could be forgiven for not realizing he's the same actor who imbued Captain Muramatsu with such dignity and confidence. Kobayashi enjoyed a long, steady career, appearing in many Ultraman and Kamen Rider series, 12 feature films by director Kon Ichikawa, and Heisei-era kaiju movies like Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, and Gamera 2: Attack of Legion. For Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review, this is Mark Matzke reporting.
Ages ago, in a long-lost part of the world, the Mayans worshipped a terrifying goddess. To her, men offered their strength and their devotion. Women offered the beauty of their bodies. Al-Tiki, the immortal monster. Today, courageous adventurers, dedicated scientists of both sexes, begin the exploration of recently discovered caverns, buried in the very womb of the earth. From space beyond space comes force beyond measurement, energizing this monstrous mass of man-eating protoplasm that devours every living thing it touches. When her mate appears in the sky, the power of Kaltiki will destroy the world. You can believe what you like. Kaltiki's been reborn. All civilians are to remain in their homes until further order. Every precaution has been taken to combat the danger the city faces, and all citizens are urged to remain calm. That is all for now. Can anything on this earth stop Kaltiki, the immortal monster?
Since Dracula stalked the earth, has the world known so terrifying a day or night.
It is I who renounce you, and in the name of Satan I place a curse upon you.
Black Sunday is like no motion picture you've ever seen. Those who believe and those who do not. But both must know the suspense, the shock of meeting the living dead and of bringing the dead to life.
Look into my eyes. Embrace me. You will die, but I can bring you pleasures mortals cannot know.
Black Sunday, the most terrifying motion picture you'll ever see.
Hello there, Monster Kid Radio heads. This is Kenny with a look at famous monsters of Filmland. Today we are talking about Planet of the Vampires, which was never covered in FM. I did find a brief paragraph on its Italian director Mario Bava, which was published in FM 170 from January of 1981 at the time of Mr. Bava's passing. Here is what it had to say. Italy's foremost figure in horror and science fiction died at 66. Mario Bava suffered a fatal heart attack in Rome on 27th of April, 1980, cutting short an illustrious career of 8 lustrums in films as a cameraman, cinematographer, screenwriter, and director. Bava made his debut as a director in 1960 with the classic tale of witchcraft, Black Sunday, which made a horror star of British actress Barbara Steele. In the 20 years following, Bava made dozens of science fiction and horror-oriented films, some under pseudonyms such as John M. Olds, Mickey Lyon, and John Foam. His last film work was in 1979 as a special effects director for Dario Argento's latest film, Inferno. This obituary is followed by a partial filmography which includes amongst its Gladiator, Giallo, and spaghetti westerns these monster kid favorites. Kaltiki, the Immortal Monster. Black Sunday, which was given film book coverage in FM 166 and 167. Black Sabbath. Today's film, Planet of the Vampires. And 1972's Barren Blood, which earned a full-length article in FM 97. The strangest film on the list? Baby Kong, an unmade concept to capitalize on the success of the 1977 King Kong. Only a concept drawing survives. Look for it on the net. That is all for this week's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. We will have more next week. For MKR, this is Kenny saying, Ciao, Bambino.
Do you believe in ghosts?
This is the night when fear and horror walk hand in hand.
This is Black Sabbath.
Starring the incomparable Boris Karloff, the personable Mark Damon, and lush and lovely women, even though one is from the netherworld, a vampire, a Burdalak. Black Sabbath, as ancient as superstition, as modern as the telephone.
How nice you look with that towel around you. You always did have a beautiful body. Beautiful. A body to drive someone crazy.
Who are you? Who?
Black Sabbath. The bare truth about the unbelievable, such as the brilliant beauty of a priceless jewel that holds within the body of a buzzing fly a vengeful woman's murderous spirit. Only on the seventh night of the seventh full moon can the living see the lifeless undead.
I am hungry.
Is he man or vampire? An adventure into black magic that goes beyond the boundaries of the supernatural. And a man's devoted love is welcomed by a woman's deadly lust for his blood.
Please, the last blow for me, Elizabeth Holly. Let me taste sweet revenge. Please, let me cut into his heart.
Behind dank walls, a nightmare world of horror and butchery awaits as a rotting corpse crawls from the earth to terrify the living. Beware of barren blood.
I would not play with the occult if I were you. One's obsession with it could be the real danger.
Barren blood. He earned his name through torture and death. The screams of his victims still echo in his chamber of horrors.
The Baron's will not only dominated this castle, but all the valley below. The people were necessary only for his convenience.
Towards the Baron, and both your lives are in danger. He will try again.
Barren blood. He returns to avenge a witch's curse and reclaim his empire of evil.
Unleash the monster on the world. You must try to send him back.
Peter! Peter! The door! He's coming in! Make it go away!
Barren blood. Starring Joseph Cotton and Elke Summer.
Beware of barren blood.
I am Dracula, and I bid you welcome to the podcast devoted to the classic, and sometimes not so classic, genre cinema of yesteryear. And I offer you this warning. Sometimes Derek and his guests get excited, and they may spoil a movie or two. You know how excited monster kids can get sometimes. If Monster Kid Radio spoils a movie for you, do not come whining to me. I cannot stand whines.
You know, I wanted to come up with some sort of clever intro, like I was on the Argus trying to reach out for assistance with an SOS or something, but really, I've just got my friend Robert Kelly from Record All Monsters on the line with me, so let's just roll with that. Welcome back to the show, man.
Thank you. And I was going to go along with that. I was prepared. I was, that little window with the handprints, that's definitely a screen to the other ship.
That was awesome, though.
I love it.
Love this movie so much. But, I want to get into the movie. I'm excited because, well, there's a couple of different reasons, and I'll share those with you in a moment. But it's also been a while since I've chatted with you.
Yes.
What's going on with you and Record All Monsters and everything else that you want to talk about?
Well, Record All Monsters is trucking along slowly. We're still around. We've had to, due to some family emergency type things, it's had to take a back seat. But we did put out in November an episode that I'm very passionate about on Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which was my first Godzilla movie. It's what started it all for me. And then we did a Christmas holiday special on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, ostensibly.
I loved that. That was so fun.
Ostensibly because of the abominable snowman, but we all know the real monster in the Rankin Bass Rudolph is that iteration of Santa. So that's what's going on there. We have 2 more planned episodes to come out before we wrap up season 2, Terror of Mechagodzilla. Which that has been gestating so long that we have had 3 different guests line up and then drop out.
Oh no!
It's just like, hey, we're doing that. First, we were supposed to record that in September with someone we've had on before.
You don't want to throw anybody under the bus, so yeah.
No,
yeah.
And it's not their fault. I mean, I have not had my my stuff together. It's all my fault.
No, you know what? Okay, not to interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt you here. We were talking before we did all this. Listeners, y'all understand, you've been incredibly patient with me, with all my personal stuff, and I'm not going to bring up all of Robert's personal stuff, but real life gets in the way, man.
Yeah.
And I think the listeners and our fans and our friends understand. So don't beat yourself up about it. Any creatives out there, don't beat yourself up about it. If life gets in the way, life gets in the way.
I'll accept that from you. And then after that, we're gonna have to wrap up the season. It was annual in my title, but now it's gonna have to be seasonal. Our Record All Monsters award show and ceremony, or Rammies for short.
Nice.
I had you on as a presenter last time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was hoping you'd do it again, not to put you on the spot on air.
I would be honored.
Wonderful.
I'll commit to that on air to hold myself to it.
So once I get the Terror of Mechagodzilla episode out, I'm going to be putting that together, and the voting for that will go live then.
Okay. Well, keep me posted, for how I need to be involved, as well as when the episode happens, because, we like to promote the good ones, man, and you're one of the good ones,
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, happy to be part of it. I have loved what you've done with your show, and I make no excuses for my love of what you do, and I've been a supporter of what you've done from the very beginning. So I just love that it's still around. I'm loving that you're still finding a way to make it happen despite everything that's going on in your life, and I'm always honored to be involved. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Derek. I really appreciate that, especially coming from you. And feel free to cut this out. I think we do this every time one of us is on the other show. You were one of the inspirations for Record All Monsters. When I heard MKR, like however long ago, looking for stuff about El Santo on my podcast feed, so means a lot.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I'm happy to help spread the love of these weird little movies that, it seems like as more time goes by, fewer and fewer people even know about, let alone respect or enjoy the way that we do. And I know you love me. I know you love a good luchador film.
Oh, yes, I do.
So
I love a bad one,
we're not
too.
talking luchadors. Yeah. But you know what? They're fun. I subscribe to, I think Kenny puts it best that, if the movie entertains you, no matter how it does it, it's not a bad movie.
Oh, yeah.
The only bad movie is a movie that's going to bore you. And I have yet to watch a luchador movie that bores me.
Never.
There is one movie. There is one movie that I could say truly bores me, that I get nothing out of. It may or may not be called Fun in Balloon Land. But other than that, I try to be positive and talk about how much we love these films, as silly or ridiculous as some of them are. And there's some silly, ridiculous stuff in the movie we're going to talk about, but there's so much cool stuff too.
Oh, there's so much cool stuff.
So we're talking about Planet of the Vampires. I'm not going to try the Italian pronunciation. I know I will get it wrong. But it is a Mario Bava film. It was produced in Italy. He's an Italian. It's got an Italian name, but we know it as Planet of the Vampires.
Terrore nello spazio.
There you go. The real reason why I have Robert on the show. He can pronounce the languages that I cannot, which is pretty much everything other than English. So every once in a while I can maybe work out a little bit of Klingon, but very rarely, and not now while I'm recovering from a sickness. So, but we wanted to have Robert on the show, and he reached out. It's like, I'm available. Like, cool. What do you want to talk about? He gave me a list of Blu-ray titles that he just recently got his hands on. This was on the list, and I was like, you know what? I keep meaning to talk about Planet of the Vampires on the show. In fact, I went to double check to make sure I hadn't, because I thought maybe I had already. Not that it matters at this point. Over 600 episodes, I'm bound to do some repeats. But it looks like I hadn't really talked about it on the show, and I think I probably even have suggested it to various people over the years, or people have come to me and said, I want to talk about it. I just never made it happen. You know what? It'll wind up just right this time around. Planet of the Vampires. Robert brought it up. He jumped at it as soon as I recommended it, and here we are. I want to know about your history with the film, though. Like, why did you pick it up on Blu-ray? Do you have a long love for this movie? What's your history with it?
This is actually a really recent watch for me.
Ah, okay.
I watched it for the first time maybe 2 or 3 years ago on a bootleg. And or should I say, I watched it 2 or 3 years ago on a gray market release. How do I say this without incriminating myself?
I think we are all quite familiar. Yeah, I think a lot of us even have those in our collection. So, yeah.
Well, because Kino Lorber had released it maybe 5-10 years ago, and that was nowhere to be found. So that was the only way I could see it. And what had happened was, my wife loves the Alien movie franchise.
Okay.
And I have a history with Italian genre movies, and this was a big blind spot in it. And I was like, hey, this is something I love the Alien movies as well, but I can only watch Prometheus so many times in a year. So I was like, this should be something that would scratch both of our urges in regards to space movies. And so I picked up the first copy I could find, and it was in such bad condition. I didn't make her watch it like that, because that would probably poison her against it. But I liked it, and so when Kino Lorber re-released the Blu-ray this year, I snatched it up, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
it's gorgeous.
It looks incredible. That or the transfer they have is really good. Now, I didn't really explore much on the special features. I can't remember. Does Kino Lorber have some good features on there?
They have 2 commentaries, and I've only listened to one of them, and I don't remember who it was with, and I don't have the disc with me to tell you which one.
Okay.
But it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable. Got some neat info, and that's really, with Kino Lorber, that's generally going to be their big special feature is a commentary.
True. So I didn't watch any of that. I just did the movie. In fact, I just finished watching the movie about half an hour ago because I just wanted it to be fresh. It's something that I'd seen repeatedly ever since the first time I skipped an opportunity to see it.
Mm-hmm.
My history with this movie is a little different in that I was kind of aware of it, but I didn't care. In that, I didn't have the connection to Bava or the interest in Bava that I have now.
Uh-huh.
Also, those of you who have read the screenwriting book Save the Cat or are familiar with that might be familiar with a term that he uses called double mumbo jumbo. Now, I hadn't read, Save the Cat wasn't even a thing the first time I had a chance to see Planet of the Vampires. But to paraphrase his theory, his philosophy about double mumbo jumbo, it's kind of a red flag in movies for him. Screenplays try to avoid this. Basically, when you have 2 different conflicting super things happening. His example, which is a little ropey to begin with, to be honest, is the movie Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films. That you have this guy, Spider-Man, who is bit by a radioactive spider, and there's your that's the mumbo jumbo of the movie. But then you've got this guy who turned himself into a green goblin through some other processes, and that's a different kind of mumbo jumbo. And now you've got these 2 mumbo jumbos, this double mumbo jumbo that conflict with each other. Now, I think he was not really taking into consideration this is all comic book stuff, and that's common there. But the bottom line is, I saw Planet of the Vampires, outer space, they don't mix. That's not a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup I'm interested in. Those are 2 different things. I don't want to mix them. I don't care. In fact, there used to be a film festival in the Portland area called Zompire, which was run by the guy who originally started the Lovecraft Film Festival.
Yeah.
First night was Zompire. First night was zombie movies. Second night was vampire movies, or the other way around. It was through that I got to see the original Day of the Dead on the big screen for the first time, and it was amazing.
Uh-huh.
But he brought in Planet of the Vampires for Vampire Night. And I was like, whatever. Vampires, outer space, it's not my thing. I just, you don't mix those 2, whatever. I don't want to watch it. So I skipped it like an idiot. Because when I finally saw this movie, I was blown away and realized I had made a horrible mistake. I had an opportunity to see this film print, 35 millimeter on the big screen at the Hollywood Theater. And I'm like, whatever. I'm only here for Day of the Dead. Which, great film, but come on. Derek, what are you thinking? So I've watched this movie several times since then, and I've gotten over the double mumbo jumbo of it because there's no vampires.
No.
It's something totally different. Vampires, Planet of Vampires was an AIP title thrown on it. I think I prefer things like Demon Planet or Terror Planet or something like that.
Terror in Space.
Terror in Space, which is vague, but, just as fine. But no, I love this movie now. I watch this movie now, and I'm like, wow, this is great.
It's one for me that I can throw on, or no, I can't throw on when I'm like doing the dishes or something, because it will take my attention. I will stop, and I'll just be like, I know what's happening, but kind of like there are so many pieces of other movies, both before and after this one, that it's almost like watching. It's almost like watching a Mystery Science Theater and trying to catch all the references.
But in a non-jokey kind of way.
Yes, in a very earnest way.
Yeah, it's an Easter egg hunt.
Yeah. This last time I watched it, which also today when I got off work, was giving me big Forbidden Planet.
Yes.
Which I didn't. Any of the past couple times I've watched it, I wasn't making that connection. But this time I did.
I'm going to side with you on that one because I hadn't thought about it either. Everybody talks about this one being an influence on Alien.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you even alluded to it a second ago when you were talking about Alien. Everybody talks about that. But I think this movie is an influence on a lot more than that and takes a few influences from other things as well. I've been thinking a lot about Forbidden Planet because, and if I can plug something real quick, I'm going to be a guest and a panelist at the upcoming Fan Expo Portland in mid-February, a convention here. That's happening, formerly Wizard World, is now Fan Expo. I'm going to be a panelist there, and we're going to be doing a live recording of Monster Kid Radio.
Oh, cool.
In the episode, the panel will be called Classic Monster Movies for Modern Audiences. And I've done something similar over the years at various conventions and festivals in the area, but I've also thought that I need to change it up and not just kind of pull out the same titles over and over again. And I thought Forbidden Planet would be a good movie to talk about because it's so Star Trek-y, and Star Trek is starting to get big again. It's like, well, there you go. There's your connection. Let's talk about it. So I've been thinking about Forbidden Planet a lot, and then I start watching this. I'm like, oh, Forbidden Planet. Maybe I should mention this movie. And I think I probably will now that I've kind of processed this out loud. Spoiler alert for anybody who might be coming to Fan Expo. It's not just me, so, I didn't just ruin the panel for you. But super excited about Fan Expo, by the way, and I'll talk about that later in the episode, or maybe I already did, depending. But anyway, yes, Forbidden Planet. Very cool.
That was what I was getting off of it this time. And I always, the spacesuits always jump up at me. The early 2000s X-Men movies basically took the spacesuits from this.
That makes sense. I can see that.
It's just every time I watch it, I feel like there's something different that's jumping out at me. Movies, past and present, for it. Like
the spacesuits are great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. We were talking, or you said earlier that there were some silly things, some goofy things.
Sure.
And one of my favorite ones, which is also genuinely eerie, and I think part of the thing that attracts me to Italian and European horror from like this period is it has no sense of where the line between spooky and goofy is. And it doesn't care how often or which way it crosses it.
Okay.
And so for me, it's the scene where the first crew members who died, spoilers, I guess, for 30 minutes into the movie, the first crew members who died come out of their space grave, and they're in these like clear body bags. And it's in slow motion. So the first part where they're pushing like the metal plate that's sealing their grave off in these plastic bags is pretty goofy, pretty funny, makes me laugh. But then when they're like actually coming out of the grave in that slow motion, it's like, oh, okay, now I'm a little spooked. Not much, but it's setting the tone.
Yeah. I did think that was a little, and you think about that sequence actually, let me kind of back up on myself there. How many deaths were they expecting when they all got on that ship and went into outer space? Because there's a lot of grave material available to them, like those tombs that they make.
Yeah.
They seem to have no problem. Like, oh, we got to pull out another one of our metal coffins out of storage. They had a lot, is what I'm saying. They were expecting a high fatality.
I imagine in a case like that, you'd probably get one for every crew member. But then who would bury the last guy? Just in case.
Right.
They had a lot of And where did they keep it? The set designs are beautiful and eerie, but there's no storage space anywhere.
Which is weird because they're so big.
Yeah.
The sets are huge. They used every bit of whatever soundstage they had, but they didn't fill it with anything.
No, and it's so striking because what they really fill it with is color or the lack thereof. Like Mario Bava, he's one of my favorite filmmakers. There are movies of his that I dislike the movie, the story that's happening, but it's so much fun just to look at.
Yeah.
And so when you have a compelling movie that's also gorgeous, the way he uses lighting and the way he influenced others to use the lighting. Like there was a scene I zoned out on the dialogue this watch through, and I had to rewind it because they said something I missed. They're talking on the ship in this archway, and the archway is lit like red and blue on one side, and they cross over without the mixed color, without purple coming through, and it's just one why, two how, and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's just gorgeous to look at.
I think he would be okay with me saying this, and he'd agree. You talk about all the influences this movie has had. I'd say it even to this day, friend of the show, Joshua Kennedy's movies have this amazing, especially things like House of the Gorgon. So obviously Bava-esque lighting and color.
Yeah.
In the cinematography, it's gorgeous. And to see that near gothic color scheming put into a science fiction setting.
Yes.
The dumbo mumbo jumbo of it. I loved it. It is so beautiful and it's so good. It is so good.
Well, and I think this is an early one for him, for Bava. I can't. What is it like his? I think it's an early one.
I'm not as familiar as I should be with Bava's filmography.
Oh no, he'd done a whole bunch by now. Like he'd done Black Sunday and Black Sabbath already. But like Black Sunday is the one that comes to mind because that has almost a haunted house feel, even though it's not a haunted house story.
Right.
But in the way the tombs and catacombs in that are treated and shot. And I think he brings that same thing to the spaceships in this, to their interiors, which is really effective in keeping you on edge because that's supposed to be where you're safe.
Yeah.
And it's this, frightening cathedral of unnatural light.
You say that, and I'm going to add another movie to the list. So, obviously, inspiration for Alien is there. Dan O'Bannon even has gone on record a few times as saying that, like the space jockey scene is directly influenced by a scene in this film. But I would go as far as saying Carpenter has pulled some inspiration from this. I detected a lot of The Thing in this.
Yes.
In terms of the bodies swapping or hopping or who's really who they say they are, that sort of thing. But I'd even say something, not one of my favorite Carpenter films, like Ghosts of Mars as well.
Yes.
In terms of some of that theming, I can pull from that. And then you start talking about the Cathedral of Light, and I'm thinking, well, this is not Carpenter, but Event Horizon has a very cathedral-like vibe as well. I mean, even based some of it on, Notre Dame, the set design. Right. So I could see some of that as well. This movie, I think, has a lot to offer. And I've never spoken with him, but I'm sure Carpenter would be like, yeah, I watched Bava.
Well, it's when you brought up Carpenter, the first thing I thought of was the finale of The Fog.
Oh yeah,
I feel like that's very inspired. It's inspired a lot by like Fulci stuff in the 70s, but also I can definitely see with the way the light works and this invasion, this unseen invasion becoming visible in that finale.
Yeah,
like, that's got to be somewhere in the influence.
For sure, no doubt. And not just because there's like some cool fog stuff happening in the movie, literal fog, but there's some really neat things happening here. And the story, we're getting hung up on like mood and vibe and some of the technical stuff. And
yeah,
I think we could probably spend an hour talking about the set design, and
we're both dorks about that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's gorgeous though. I was talking with a friend of mine, Chrissa from Scaregrounds PDX, earlier today, actually, via Facebook Messenger about Star Trek. And, she loves Star Trek. And I was talking about how much I love TOS, the original series and that sort of thing. And she made some comments about, Kirk kind of icks her out a little bit. And, that kind of ruins TOS for her a little bit. And I get that. Kirk does have a baggage.
To put it nicely.
And, right or wrong of the time or not, sometimes very over-exaggerated, but he's a ladies' man and doesn't treat women very well, and there's whatever. But my love for Star Trek, the original series, which is my favorite of the whole run, is the aesthetics.
Likewise. Yeah.
And the aesthetics of these older movies that try to imagine the future, I just love. And this one nails it for me. This is one of my I think the only thing movie-wise that kind of overshadows this for me would be the 4 films that are part of like the Wild Wild Planet and that sort of series. That aesthetic, again, Italian sci-fi. I love that vibe.
Yeah, it's something like one of the first conversations we had was about Invasion of Astro Monster, Godzilla vs. Monster Zero.
Yeah, there you go.
Also brings that future look with the Exilian aliens, and that came out the same year as this movie, and it's just remarkable what we could dream up for what the future would look like and how boring things are now. And like white barn doors.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to Star Trek again, I love my Star Trek.
Yeah.
There are some things about it I don't like, some series that are my least favorite, but even now, whenever they do a prequel series, the filmmakers, the showrunners, whoever, seem to have this need to kind of make things a little bit more sterile, a little less bright and vibrant and colorful and all that, and I miss that. I love Strange New Worlds, but it doesn't look like my original series, and that's my preference.
Well, and
I get it, but
I'm completely with you on that. With the brightness, and this hopefulness, this earnestness that comes through in every aspect of the original series. That's also my favorite Star Trek. But just like even with the movie we're talking about today, where things are designed to be dark and intimidating, there's still this vibrance in the set design, like on the planet they're on. You have these black foreboding mountains in the background of like every shot, but there's this like vermilion sunset just over the horizon.
Yeah.
And the sky is like all shades of orange and scarlet and pink and black, and it's all mixed together, and it's just so
beautiful,
bright and beautiful, but also intimidating as hell.
Yeah. I don't watch a lot of movie reviews of the movies that we're going to talk about here on the show right beforehand, unless I'm just trying to make sure I get some facts down.
Yeah.
This time around, I did watch the Trailers from Hell episode on this. in which Joe Dante talks about risking his life to see Mario Bava movies, because back then he had to go to a grindhouse or something. And I'm trying to imagine how this would have played in an environment like that, because I feel like there's so much that if you just watch it, it's going to suck you in and you're not going to be interested in anything else going around you.
Yeah.
Going on around you for the next 90 minutes, you know? The hijinks and the chaos that might have happened in a grindhouse theater that Joe Dante felt his life at stake. How could that happen if you're watching this movie? Because it's just so gorgeous and engaging, and I couldn't look away.
No,
I could not look away.
And that's why I can't do laundry while I watch this movie.
Yeah. I've got some laundry in my washing machine right now. I was like, I'll just hang that while I'm watching this. It's still in the washing machine. I'll get to it later, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I had to pause it to make dinner, because I was going to make dinner with it on, and no.
Yeah, it's too good. It's too good. I'm assuming the Kino version, and I haven't explored it too much. It has different audio tracks. I mean, it's got this commentary tracks, but does it have something other than an English dub? Is that the only way this movie was ever released? Do you know?
It does not have the Italian dialogue. I think that is because AIP dubbed it, and the way they made Italian, most European movies in general at the time, they recorded no audio on set, and all dialogue was done ADR for the various markets. And since AIP owns the film, or I guess MGM now, or who owns MGM now?
Who knows?
So what they have is the AIP English dub track, because there is no true audio track for this movie.
Right. A lot of the European films, especially Italian films.
Yeah.
I mean, people know I love spaghetti westerns. I also have a huge love, and I don't talk about this enough, I feel like, for Euro spy films, the Italian James Bond knockoffs. I love those. Ken Clark, I love his stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Mission Bloody Mary and things like that. Adore those movies. And then the spaghetti westerns, I'm all in, man. And when I did some work with a local film, I guess house, they weren't really a production company, but they own a distributor maybe, or I don't even know what I don't know what they were anymore. It's been a few years and things kind of went weird, but they owned so many spaghetti westerns, and I asked them one day naively, well, are these in the original English or Italian, and we have to put subtitles on them? And they're like, oh, Derek, let me explain to you how movie production was done in the 60s and 70s in Italy. And yeah, it was all shot wild audio so many times, whatever actor they had, just speak whatever language you normally speak. We're going to fix it in post.
Yeah.
Which, you know, again, it was coming for all that stuff. And it's what the Shaw Brothers did too.
Yeah.
You know, the Kung Fu films, you know, they couldn't stop the planes from flying from overhead. So just say whatever, we'll fix it in post.
Yeah.
We'll cut out all the audio and just redub the whole thing.
Well, and I remember I read an interview with Eli Wallach about working on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah.
And Sergio Leone's, obsessive care over what was going to be on the camera.
Yeah.
And complete lack of care for anything that wasn't. You got to have lunch. Find a time to eat lunch. We're shooting this.
Yeah.
And one of the things he talked about was getting used to, having to just have the beats when his scenes weren't with Lee Van Cleef or Clint Eastwood, because he didn't know what language the next guy was going to be talking to him. So
yeah. Yeah. That's why if you watch some of those movies from the 60s and 70s, especially contemporary movies, not like sci-fi or westerns, but if they pick up a phone, instead of saying hello, they'll say proceed, because the dubbing, I don't know what the word is for hello, it starts with a per sound for in Italian when you pick up a phone. So they say proceed to make it match the lips better when the dubbing, whatever.
Yeah.
They're just little things or whatever. But I think that kind of works in this film's benefit as well, because it meant they had to go through to create a complete soundscape.
Yeah.
And as a sound effects guy, somebody who would love to get back into doing that, so any indie filmmakers looking for anybody, I work cheap, do some sound effects for you. Some of the sound effects in this are pretty cool. There's awesome footsteps in the spaceship.
Oh, yeah.
That make it sound even more vast than it already is.
Yeah,
I loved that.
Everything comes...
And the crunchy when they're out on the planet.
Yes!
And they're walking around. Oh, it sounds so cool.
There's just so much going on in this, and it's all so well done. If you're paying attention, it can be overwhelming, and if you're not paying attention, it forces you with these long stretches without dialogue, but with such attention to detail in the soundscape, or just like this, the visuals just completely pouring off the screen. It's like a moving painting in some ways. This is one that just, like you said when you saw it for the first time, totally blew me away, took me by surprise.
Yeah.
I'd heard its reputation, did not expect it to be up to it.
Yeah. Now, I've never read it, but there's apparently a really good biography on Ib Melchior out there, who was screenwriter on this, who had written a handful of genre flicks that I either love or keep meaning to talk about here on the show, like Reptilicus. He can decide which category that's in.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have some things on Reptilicus, let me tell you. Yeah, I'll plug my show. We did an episode with Chris McDonald of the... what's it called now? It's called Phaser Media. At the time, it was called Ghoulish Media.
Okay.
But we talked. We had some fun at the expense of Reptilicus.
It's actually, I like Reptilicus for what it is, but is it as good as this one? No. But I did find it interesting that Melchior is credited as having written some of the American script, I guess, or American versions of some early Godzilla films.
Yes,
like so the American version of Godzilla Raids Again, and Gigantus the Fire Monster. That's actually just Godzilla Raids Again, right?
Yes. So here, you woke up the sleeping giant.
I was hoping to, man. It's your thing. It's your wheelhouse.
So when Toho made Godzilla Raids Again, which Godzilla's counterattack, the guy who brought it over, I want to say it was Sam Levine, but it might not have been. But he had been involved with the original Godzilla releasing company that distributed the first one, and he thought it'd be much more appealing to American audiences to have a new monster, because a series of giant monster movies wasn't a thing. Giant monster movies were barely a thing. There'd been 3. There'd been like King Kong, the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, them, and the original Godzilla at that point.
Yeah.
So to bring it over, they were like, well, let's twist it into a brand new monster movie. And they were going to call it The Volcano Monsters.
Okay.
And they hired Ib Melchior to write a screenplay around the effects footage. And the story was basically that a volcano went off, and a T-Rex and an Ankylosaurus were awoken out of a frozen slumber, and they just went ham on the world until they killed each other in Japan, and then got covered, and then got destroyed by the army. So, what?
Okay.
And yeah, and he wrote a few new effect scenes, and so the company that was making this asked Toho, since they had the rights to distribute it, if they could have the suits, so they could film some like pickups with the suits for some new effect scenes. And Toho sent the suits over, and no one has seen them since. Except Bob Burns, who has a story about finding them in a warehouse in the 50s.
I've heard that, actually.
And he was just like, wow, this is Godzilla. Anyway, I'm here to do something. But so when that didn't pan out, when the Volcano Monsters was not working out, they took elements of Melchior's script for the dub script, and then he also punched up the dialogue for the final dub script to get things to match better, because that was kind of his specialty. And so yeah, he was involved with Gigantus the Fire Monster, and he'd written the Volcano Monsters, which was supposed to be how that came over here. And then he also took elements from the Volcano Monsters for Reptilicus.
Okay.
So he recycled some of that. And the rumor is that he did some uncredited writing on Henry Saperstein's Godzilla imports in the early 60s, but I have no confirmation on that. I've just heard that bandied around.
Okay.
So yeah, there's detour over.
Yeah, no, I brought it up because I know, that's your bag, man. You're more qualified to talk about it than I am, with your experience and all that. But he had also written other things, Journey to the Seventh Planet, John Agar film.
Angry
classic.
Red Planet as well.
Angry Red Planet. A few episodes of the TV series Men into Space, which I actually really like. I keep meaning to, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it, but I'd like to highlight Men into Space on Monster Kid Radio somehow, because there's some really cool stuff in there.
It's a really fun one. I used to watch it on Comet TV when that started up.
Same.
It would be on before Johnny Sacco and his flying robot, so I would get 2 hours of Men into Space and then kaiju action.
Yeah.
So it's
one of the things that I miss about not having cable, is no MeTV, no Comet.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Comet's got a website and a Roku channel that you can watch them on, but I like the convenience of just recording it to a DVR and watching it whenever I want. So,
well, and I love to throw it on just throw it on TV. It's actually what I leave on for my dog when I go to work.
That's awesome.
So she's seen, countless episodes of the X-Files and Godzilla movies and
fantastic.
Which, I mean, she watches those when I'm home too. So
it's like you're home. It's like, I get that. I set my Amazon Echo to play certain playlists for Wednesday when I'm gone. Just pretend I'm still here and listen to this nerdcore rap playlist I put together. I don't know if she really gets anything out of it or not, but it's a fun little game for me to try to guess what song's playing before I get home. So, but speaking of music,
yes.
Gino Marinuzzi Jr. credited as doing the music for this. And like Forbidden Planet, it's got a lot of just weird electronic sounds to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got some traditional stuff too, or almost traditional scoring in it as well. But I do like that mix of the electronic sounds. They're just now starting to figure out how to use electronics to make weird noises for science fiction movies. So let's put it in there and make it happen, and I love it.
Yes, and I love... this is another thing you and I geek out about a lot, is the scores for things. I love how the score is used so differently in different parts of the movies. Most of the movie, it is an accent. It's not drawing any attention away. It's enhancing. But there are times where the score really gets to shine as well. And again, we talk the balance. Everything's so well balanced in this movie. And the score is just another example.
The way the music is used, there are stretches of movie where there is no music. It is nothing but sound effects, nothing but somebody walking down a hallway, doing something funny to open a cabinet to get access to a button or a key. There are just huge stretches of nothing but these natural sounds happening. And then the music punches in and you're like, oh, okay, there we go. It's very cool and very well done. And I'm a huge fan of how it plays out.
Yeah, it's just just another thing. I feel like this whole time we've just been saying, hey, wasn't this part of the movie cool? Wasn't this part of the movie cool?
But it was.
It was.
Okay. If I had to criticize anything, and I'll go there. I know it's a product of the time. There is a moment where there's a scare and a woman faints away because she's spooked.
Yeah.
Okay. There. There's my criticism of the movie.
There we go. Some of the hair is a little off. No. It's a really good movie. It is one that I always, I have a great time when it's on.
Yeah. I was watching it and I kept thinking, man, I'm glad I'm talking with Robert about this. I want to show it to my fiance.
How do you think she'd take it? She might get some haunted house ideas out of it.
I was going to say haunted house ideas plus, the production design and all that, she really is keen on and really kind of keys in onto that. And I think the production design in this is gorgeous, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
I keep going back to those costumes too. And I was looking at them the whole time thinking, is there some way I could recreate that for one of my Hawaiian shirt designs? Because that just looks awesome.
That would be excellent. I would watch it with the logo though.
Yeah.
What with Hawaiian shirts and some of their other connotations and.
Oh, good call. All right, won't be doing that one.
I'm also a Hawaiian shirt guy, so that's upsetting to me as well. So,
you mentioned the logo though, and that's something. It's subtle.
Very.
It's something they don't make a big deal out of, but there is an internal, a consistent internal wardrobe continuity in terms of what the logo or the symbol on their chests look like. The guy in charge has a bigger symbol than the guys beneath him, and then there's a few people that have just the one bar across it, and their lower ranking. And it's just one of those world-building things that worked really well for me, and I thought that was pretty darn cool too.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's something that original series Star Trek did really well as well, like the different ships having their insignias and the bars beneath it, or how they were pinned to the shirts being different for officers and yeomen.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I know they've gotten away from each ship having its own symbol and all that. I know that's kind of been retconned a little bit, but yeah, I always liked that. I always thought that was cool. So, I couldn't tell with this one if it was really me seeing it as a different color or if it was just blood on the uniform making it look this color. But it looked to me that the crew of the Argus all had the yellow symbol on their chest, but the crew on the other ship, their symbol was red. Did that read that way to you?
I saw that way too, that it was a reddish orange as opposed to the yellow. It was darker. It was different. And that was just something I assumed, on this watch through. I was like, oh, that's right. That the Galliot, their highlights are red, which.
I mean, I was willing to chalk it up to me being colorblind, yeah, but
no, I got that too. Reddish orange, orangish red.
Okay. Wasn't just me then. That's good to know.
No.
But that said, folks, the fact that I'm colorblind and I'm still enjoying the set design and the color and the light design and all this, I mean, come on.
It's stunning.
Yeah,
it's stunning.
And the cast is good. The cast is pretty good. I do like the captain.
Yes.
A lot. I think the cast is solid and everybody performs well. Everybody does what they're supposed to do. Barry Sullivan is Captain Mercury. Captain is Mark.
Yes.
Is fantastic. I'm not overly familiar with a lot of the cast. I'm sure I've seen him in different things. And I think Barry Sullivan is an American, isn't he?
Yes, he is. And I wanted to point out that we'd made some comparisons to Forbidden Planet throughout. Yeah. I put them on the same level personally.
Wow.
I may even give this one a slight edge because this captain is not a sexist dirtbag.
This is true. He's not.
And like, my wife and I both love Forbidden Planet, but like on the recent rewatches we've had of it, we've just been pretty much loudly booing Leslie Nielsen whenever he comes on.
Yeah, he's... I mean, go back to what I was saying about Kirk, I guess. You know, product of the time. I don't know, but yeah, there's that.
But yeah, I think this is one of the best examples of, you know, kind of the 1950s, 1960s soft sci-fi being serious, being able to be taken seriously, and being just compelling as hell.
You know, it's good sci-fi, but it's also good horror. And again, that dumb Derek from, God, that must have been like 10 years ago, at least at this point. Go back in time and shake that kid, I say, that younger version of myself. Go see. I was even hanging out in the lobby with the festival director, Andrew Migliori, who will be on the show later this year.
Cool.
Talking with him, and he's like, Planet of the Vampire's playing. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'll just hang out. I'm going to leave for Day of the Dead. And he looked at me like, are you crazy? Because he was the one that programmed it. And he knew. Like, he was right. I shouldn't have talked to him. I should have gone to see Planet of the Vampires instead. It was just on the other side of the door, darn it.
You reprimanded me for giving myself a hard time. You got to take it easy, man. It's the past.
Yeah, past Derek made some pretty dumb decisions. So I reserve the right to, you know, if I could.
Hey,
I joked about this on Facebook a while back. If I had a time machine, I'd certainly go back in time and give younger Derek a talking to.
Yeah, we've all done so. We've all pulled a few boners.
Yeah,
but watching this, talking about this, not one of them.
No, this one is so good. I had such a blast with this. This is one of those movies, and I feel this way about Margaritis, Planet Films and all that. Which Gamma 4, is that the name of the series? Gamma 1,
I think so.
Yeah, that series of films. I wish there was more. I want there to be more. I want that to be the franchise. I love my Star Trek, don't get me wrong, and you know, Lost in Space has its place and a few of those others, but I would have loved for this to become something. I feel like all the building blocks are there.
Yeah.
All the pieces are there, right down to the wardrobe consistencies with the ranking. You know, it's all there.
Well, and again, it kind of did in a very quiet way, because of how much it has influenced science fiction continuing to this day.
True.
Like
True.
It's like all those little courthouses around the country that are made to look like the big buildings in Washington, D.C. It's like, you know, without those, or without the big ones, we wouldn't have such nice architecture around us.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Might have been a stretch.
It might have been, but you know, I kind of like it. I kind of like where you're going with it. I'll accept it. Overruled. I don't know. Okay. It is really good though, and it's gorgeous, and it does make me wonder who's got the rights to this at this point. You said MGM and is probably the owner of the film itself, but the story, who owns the rights to the story it was based on?
That would be interesting
One Night
to know.
Of 24 Hours by Renato Pestraniti. Is that the name? Prestanieri. I don't know.
My dog Mandy, she sat on my phone, so I can't.
Renato
Pestranerios.
Okay. See, another reason why I have you on the show.
It was released on a double feature with Die Monster Die.
Which I love, Die Monster Die. I had forgotten this was released on a double feature with Die Monster Die until earlier today. It's like, I love Die Monster Die. I love the colors of that one. It is so wacky.
Yeah.
It's got the Lovecraft thing. It's got Karloff. It's got my, if you can't afford John Adams, can't afford John Agar, getting Nick Adams. I can't even say it now. Can't afford John Agar, getting Nick Adams. I love my Nick Adams.
Yeah, he's
I'm not even going to cut that out. This episode's going out pretty much raw as it is. So, yeah.
Can I do a cuss?
Oh no, no, no. But no, I love Die Monster Die as well so much. Which, there's a whole thing there to get into. The guy who worked on that, also working on the other two Roger Corman touched Lovecraft films.
Yes.
So yeah. All right. So One Night of 21 Hours was a short story. This feels like a short story. It's got kind of like that zinger ending to it,
Oh, that twist ending.
Yeah.
Very, very short story. Who? That would be interesting. Who owns that?
I just want to know the publication. Like, when did it come out? Because depending on how old it is, it might, or
Might be
where it was
public
published,
domain.
it might be in public domain at this point, at which point I could do whatever I wanted with it.
Adaptation.
Yeah. Let's see. So apparently an English version of the story is available as a PDF on the Blu-ray, or at least on a version of the Blu-ray. That's kind of cool. Okay, I'll have to look into that. But yeah, I want to read it. I want to see if that twist ending is in there and what embellishments or changes Bava and Company did when they worked on this. And I say Bava and Company because his son worked on this movie too, Lamberto, right? And if I remember right, I believe this was the first time the two of them actually worked together.
I think you're right. I had looked into that, and I can't remember now.
I remember reading that somewhere or hearing that somewhere. I could be totally wrong, but because I'm not cutting any of this out, listeners, you now have a reason to call in. Leave me some voicemail to correct me. The other name that I wanted to mention, though, real quick, Carlo Rambaldi worked on this.
Yes.
Did a lot of the models and such. Bava himself worked on a lot of the special effects. Carlo Rambaldi made one of the coolest Medusas ever in a peplum film, in a sword and sandal film over in Italy. He worked on Woman in a Lizard Skin, which got him in trouble. Because he had done the effect of a dead dog, and the courts thought he really killed the dog, but he really didn't. But he also worked on E.T. So
yes, that's what I was about to bring up.
He kind of ran the gamut. And he worked on Alien, too, which, he got to work on both, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Carlo Rambaldi did a lot of really cool stuff. Everything from, like I said, E.T., the 70s King Kong he worked on, the lesser of the Schwarzenegger Conan films. He's worked on some really cool stuff. The Medusa movie I was looking for the title of because it's had a handful of different titles, and I am drawing a blank on it. But seriously, it might have been the 63. Yeah, that's it. It's a Richard Harrison starring sword and sandal movie. It's had a number of different titles depending on who was releasing it. They either called it a Hercules film or a Perseus film, depending on who had the distribution at the time. But I think it's probably best known as Medusa Against the Son of Hercules.
I have that somewhere in my stacks and stacks.
The Medusa, that is just so cool.
I'll have to check that one out.
So cool.
I
love it. so cool. And I had a chance to talk to him. Boy, we're all over the place, but I'll mention it anyway if I hadn't already mentioned on the show before. I had a chance when I was working for that film outfit here to talk to some people that were involved in some of these European films.
Oh, wow.
Became friends with Roger Brown, Argo Man.
Yeah.
Who was also the president of the dubbing organization in Italy, who was responsible for putting all these movies together with English tracks. but I also had a chance to talk to Richard Harrison over the phone a couple of times.
Oh, wow.
Because they were friends with him as well. And I, first of all, called him Mr. Harrison, and he threatened to hang up. It's like, no, you call me Richard. All right, cool. No problem. Richard. Felt really weird to say that to Richard freaking Harrison. Got to hear stories about how he lived in the house that was owned by Barbara Steele, and now there were all sorts of parties that happened there. But then also I asked him about this movie, and he said that he was responsible for making sure that Medusa looked as good as it did, because the producers were like, we don't have the money for all this. So, sorry, Rambaldi, work with what you got. And Harrison's like, no, I want this to look good. So he was talking about how he put money into the production himself to make sure that the monsters looked awesome in this, and they really do.
Yeah, I'll have to check this out. I'm pretty sure that I have a bunch of like when Mill Creek used to put out those real bad DVDs, I have a ton of those, and I'm pretty sure I saw that title on the back.
Yeah, that's an adequate transfer for what it is, but because the company I was working for had
the good one,
better transfer, well, it was an Italian language release, so it was cut a little differently and had different dubbing on it and that sort of thing. And I think as an experiment at one point, I did try to edit the English language track onto the Italian print to kind of make it, to get the English language version of it, but have the better picture. Yeah, it was crazy making because the cuts were so different. There were multiple times when I was working for them when they wanted me to do that with some of their spaghetti westerns as well, but for whatever reason, when the Americans got their hands on the spaghetti westerns, they decided the scenes were out of order and started putting them in different orders and all that. And trying to keep track of all of that was a mess. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I was just
Oof.
reading about Synapse Films' recent release of the first Blind Dead movie.
Yeah.
Where they did that, and they said they would have stopped if they hadn't already promised that was going to be on the disc because it was a bad decision because of just what you were saying.
I had no idea going into it. I just assumed, okay, here's your master print, and that will just play whatever audio on top of it. No, there's many times where it's just a few seconds off here or a few seconds off there, or let's put this scene at the the bathhouse earlier in the movie. I'm like, but that doesn't make sense. Okay, whatever. Yeah. What are we talking about? Oh, yeah, Planet of the Vampires. See, okay. I've made some genuine friends working on the podcast. You're one of them. And if we had the opportunity to get together after work over some coffee, tea, and a handful of movies, we'd get nothing else done. But watch movies and then talk about them for just as long, if not longer, afterwards.
Yeah, I feel bad. I was about to apologize. I feel like I always do this to you.
Nah, this is fun for me. I don't know about the listeners. Call in and let me know, but it is fun for me.
I was holding back earlier when you brought up the lesser Conan film. I wanted to I don't know. I started a voicemail after you talked about the Conan movies, and I just kept going on, and I deleted it because that was my Conan, because I was too young to see the.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So when I could get to see the good one, I already had a background. But no more digressions, Derek.
You know what? No, that's okay. It's my show. I can digress. Here's the thing. I do have a better appreciation for Conan the Destroyer now after having discussed it with Steve Turek last year. I'll give him that. I'll give Conan the Destroyer that. It's no Conan the Barbarian at all. But, it is what it is. Also, there are plans to have a proper Robert E. Howard episode of Monster Kid Radio in the near future with David Heath, who will be coming on to discuss it. David Heath is somewhat local to me, although fortunately I still only see him at various conventions. Otherwise, again, we'd have that whole we get together, talk movies, and nothing else would get done. I will be seeing him at Fan Expo, and I hope at that point he and I can kind of firm up plans to do the Robert E. Howard Monster Kid Radio episode. Have an interesting take on it. Don't really want to get into it too much right now until I know whether or not it's actually viable, but I'm hoping it'll happen sometime this year.
I'm excited for that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Howard's my jam. Oh. Anyway. Howard never wrote science fiction, though. Get back to Planet of the Vampires. Great sci-fi, great horror.
Yes.
Looks really good. Sounds great. I love those sets so much. The suits, the uniforms with those ridiculous collars. I love them.
And the wimples. The wimples for
Yes.
when they put on the space helmets. Oh, my goodness.
Yes. Sure, some of the effects are a little silly, like when they're looking at the communication screen, it's really just a glass window or whatever. But, you do what you got to do.
Yeah. You make it work. And also with that, like I joked about that at the beginning of this, but that's still a really cool visual, this little bubble window. Like,
yeah.
And it's clear what it is, but also at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, what else would it look like?
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think of back when I thought I'd be a filmmaker when I grew up. I was taking these video production courses over and over and over again at the community college, 3 times for credit, 3 more times because they got me access to the editing equipment, and I didn't care about wasting my financial aid on a class I couldn't take any more credit for. The final of the year, it was a set schedule. The what do you call them? Whatever the class course list is. Gosh, I haven't been in college in forever. It never changed. It was always like 8 different assignments every couple of weeks. First you make a music video, then you make a persuasion video or a commercial or whatever. A video about comparing and contrast. A nonverbal emotional, so tell a story without any words. Things like that. And the final of the year was always to make a mini movie. And one year, my mini movie was a little science fiction movie that I thought I could pull off in Laramie County Community College's very low budget studio and the campus. And if I had thought to do something where they were talking to another ship through a sheet of glass, a window or something, I would have done it. It felt very DIY, and that always gets my blood pumping.
Yes.
I didn't do that. Instead, I rolled out this TV that was clearly a TV and made pretend that they were doing a screen-to-screen thing, but whatever. It just looked cool.
Yeah.
And I loved it, and it was so neat. Planet of the Vampires, man, enthusiastic recommendation from both of us, I think. I don't know what else to say.
Absolutely. I do think I know what you could say.
Okay.
You could say, hey, Robert, let's play the Classic 5.
Gosh, I haven't busted out the Classic 5 cards in forever. Do I even know where they are? You know what? Even if I don't, I think I've got the file here. I haven't done the Classic 5 on the show in a very long time either. And I was actually thinking about that earlier today.
I know. But it's one of my favorite parts of the show, and it's also just a fun thing. I feel like when we do get to talk, like honestly, if we weren't recording this, I'd still be like, hey.
Okay, fair enough. We'll bust out. So I don't have the actual cards in hand because I don't know where they ended up. My office is covered in a couple of Lego creations that got knocked over, and it says nothing but Lego brick and my work computer and everything I've got set up to get this novel done that I'm working on. So it's been a mess. But I've got the original file, the master spreadsheet. The Classic 5 is a game that we used to play on Monster Kid Radio every single week, and I'd like to bring it back later this year. So thank you for helping me to grease the gears a little bit to maybe get it started again. It's basically a this or that, what movie do you prefer style kind of question and answer game. There are no wrong answers. There's just questions, a couple of friends talking about monster movies and having a good time. Robert, you ready to play a round of the Classic 5?
Oh, yes, sir, Derek.
All right. Now, I don't know if you've done any of these. I'm just going to start picking them randomly here. If we did, excuse me, let me start that over. I'm not even going to cut that out whenever this is a raw episode.
If we do,
not because I'm recording this on a Thursday night and I want to get it out there. I don't want to take time to edit. If we do a question that you know you've done, let me know and we'll go to something different.
Okay.
Cool?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, cool. So question number 1, what classic monster movie would you show as part of a double feature with the original Godzilla?
With the original Godzilla. Okay, I have a couple of answers here, but I'm going to go with probably the one that will get me in the most trouble.
Oh no! Monster Kid Radio is a safe place. It's okay.
I would show it as a double feature with Godzilla's Revenge.
Okay.
That is for a number of reasons. That is one of my comfort movies. I was a tall, lanky, weird kid, and I got bullied a lot. And that movie went a long way toward helping me, find my courage and my own footing. So it's a comfort to me. It's also, Ishiro Honda has said, his favorite of the Godzilla movies that he made.
Really?
Yes. Well, after the original. Because it was the first time he said he got to make a monster movie that was about people. And I could go on and on and on about it, and as a matter of fact, I have. The longest episode of Record All Monsters is 90 minutes long of me talking about why I love this movie. And I think because it is a reflection on how far the character of Godzilla has changed since 1954, and what Japan looks like at that time in 1969, I think it's a very good contrast, thoughtful double feature that also has great music in both movies and just some ridiculous, wonderful visuals as well.
Huh. I like that. I can't say it's one of my favorite Godzilla movies. There's stuff in it that I like, but if I were to rank my Godzilla movies, I don't think I'd put it up very high. But, that's interesting. Especially if you were to look at it through the lens of what has happened in Japan since the production of the first film and all that. And that goes back to something I was talking about in last week's episode in response to some email from Kevin Slick about these movies being more than just, hey, it's a movie. It's a snapshot into the history and the society and the culture and what was going on at the time of the production of the film. And that's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, and again, I talked for 20 minutes longer than the movie is about why I think,
Hey.
it's that's my answer.
I did that on 1951 Downplays with Scott and Casey many times where we talk longer than the movie itself. So I totally get it. Totally cool. Right on. All right. Well, question number 2. Who's your favorite classic Scream Queen?
Classic Scream Queen. Well, I mean, I feel like everyone's expecting me to say Fay Wray as the monster guy. As the giant monster guy. But I actually think I'm going to go with Barbara Steele.
Okay.
Or am I going too classic here?
No. It's classic as defined by the players, I guess. So, yeah, Barbara Steele counts. Yeah.
She's... for me, I always go back to her performance in The Pendulum. Vincent Price. That is my favorite of the Poe Corman movies. And she's fantastic in it. Just this sneering ghost lady. She's my favorite.
Okay. I've been wanting to do more Barbara Steele on the show, so sounds like we got a guest for one of those for a Barbara Steele episode at some point.
Oh yeah.
She's good. She's good.
Is.
I have had a chance to meet her, interviewed her on stage at the Lovecraft Film Festival. Her son, at one point, I don't know if he still does, but her son owned a gourmet popcorn shop in Portland. And at one point, there was rumors that she was going to move to Portland, but ultimately decided that it wasn't European enough for her. So it's like, well, Portland is weird and quirky. We're not European. I'll give you that. But that's cool. No, she is good, and she's like the last horror royalty we have right now. She's,
yeah.
Well, good stuff. All right. That was number 2. Question number 3. Let's save this. Favorite Roger Corman film?
Okay. This is tough. My instinct is to just go Pit and the Pendulum because I just brought it up. And that is way up there. My brain is running so fast it feels like it's standing still. Like just You know what? I don't think he directed this one, but he produced it. It's his not Star Wars.
Battle Beyond the Stars?
Yes, that's the one. Battle Beyond the Stars. That is a movie I stumbled across on TV one night when I was a kid, and it was amazing. And it's just one of the movies that first comes to mind when I think about Roger Corman is that just the utility. You know, you've got a used story, you've got a used setting, you've got previously used special effects scenes and soundtrack elements, but it all comes together, and I think it's probably my favorite. It's definitely one of my favorite Roger Corman movies, and one of my favorite Star Wars knockoffs.
You say it all comes together like a plan. And I say that because when I first saw Battle Beyond the Stars, it was deep in my fandom of the A-Team, and I thought, this is the guy from the A-Team in a science fiction movie. I love this.
Well, see, for me, I always go straight to Robert Vaughn. I always go, he's so good. He really is playing it like it's the sequel to The Magnificent Seven.
It really is. I mean, I didn't know that at the time when I saw it. I had no idea. But you go back and watch it now, knowing it's like, he just kind of played the same guy in outer space.
He knows exactly what's happening, and he's fine with it.
Yeah. No, I loved Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah.
That was a childhood favorite as well. All right, question number 4. You know what? I'm going to pull out a question. We've probably done all the kaiju cards, but you know what? Let's see here. Let's grab one anyway. If you could have been on set during the production of a kaiju movie, which one would it have been?
Ooh. You know, I do think we did this one the first time I was on, but I don't remember what my answer was because that was like 3 years ago.
Okay.
I think, I'm going to say War of the Gargantuas.
Ooh.
Because, one, so there would be someone bigger around to make Russ Tamblyn cooperate. All
right.
I'm 6'4". I'm 270 pounds. Like, what's he gonna do? He's gonna listen to Mr. Honda. But also the effect sequences on that are so, because they're at literally at a smaller scale, both in terms of the physicality and the the stakes of the film, that just would have been fascinating to watch how that was put together.
Okay.
And then, yes, of course, to bully Russ Tamblyn into cooperating.
Not that Monster Kid Radio, supports such act. We're anti-bullying, but I get it. All right, final question. Maybe this isn't fair because it is a Bava film as well, but which movie do you prefer, The Blob or Kaltiki, the Immortal Monster?
Oh, I think I have more fun watching Blob. Partly because of that song over the opening credits.
Yeah, it's stuck in your head right now.
Yeah, it is. As soon as you said The Blob.
Yeah.
As soon as you said The Blob. And also because Steve McQueen, whenever we watch that movie, I like whenever he comes on and they're like, "You're just a kid." I'm like, he's the teenageriest teenager. And I made an in Canva after I'd watched The Blob, like when it was on Svengoolie or something. I made a Tiger Beat magazine all about teen heartthrob Steve McQueen.
Do you still have that?
I'll email it to you if I can find it.
Oh, if you can find it, I would love to include it in this episode's show notes. That sounds amazing.
I'll see if I can find it.
That sounds so cool. So listeners, if you can find it, it'll be in the show notes. If not, just use your imagination. I bet it was amazing.
I might post it into the Facebook group if I
There we go. Another reason to join the Facebook page.
If I find it too late to get it in the show notes, I'll post it in there.
In the Facebook group. Got it. Okay. I love both films. I really do. I've been on a Blob kick lately because my future father-in-law loves The Great Escape. And so we've talked about Steve McQueen, that sort of thing. And also at my current job, I'm still in training, but, it's all remote work from home type stuff. And they, as an icebreaker one day, is like, so I want you to look around the room you're in right now and show us the weirdest thing you have in your room. Cool. Everybody's, weird pictures of their dog or, weird souvenirs from whatever. And I'm like, hold on a second. I cheated. I don't keep it in the office. I keep it in the living room. But I ran out to the living room, came back in, and was like, look at this. And I held up this teeny tiny vial that I have with a piece of the original Blob in it. Oh. And they asked me, where did you have to go get that? And I said I keep it in the refrigerator, but they didn't get the joke. Because they aren't overly familiar with the film, and they're not movie nerds like I am. But a dear friend of mine, friend of the show, he's been on the show, gave it to me as a gift a few years ago, and it's one of my treasured possessions. So,
but Sonny, Derek, I as soon as you said you keep it in the refrigerator, I was like, where else would you keep it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's what he's no longer with us, but Wes Schenk, before he passed, he was the caretaker of basically the remains of the Blob, and he would take it to Monster Bash and all that in a bucket and show it to people, and it was made of like some petroleum products, so it never dried out. It was always kind of liquidy, kind of gooey and gross, and I probably wouldn't want to touch it, but he kept it in a bucket. And I asked him, what he does with it between shows. Where does he keep it? And he said, in the freezer. Where else? I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that was the Classic 5.
Oh, thank you,
and
Derek.
I think that is a good way to end the show. So, excellent call there.
Thank you
for
indulging me.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I do want to bring the Classic 5 back. I did talk about doing a new deck to have ready for Halloween of last year, but 2022 was a mess, y'all. I mean, some good moments, but there was a lot of rough periods to get through as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of the plans that I had for 2022 have had to be shifted to 2023, and I'm trying to practice that whole allowing myself some grace and patience and self-love to not get too upset about that.
Well,
so
and, I
maybe
think
we'll see it.
This is the first time I've been on since you got engaged. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Beth is amazing. I'm an incredibly lucky dude. I'm not just saying that on the off chance she listens to this. And there's a good chance she will, because she seems to really appreciate what I do with Monster Kid Radio, loves the show, loves what I do with it. And we've got some pretty big plans for Monster Kid Radio and beyond for 2023.
Well, and she's been a charming guest on the show as well.
I'll let her know you said that. I appreciate that. I've loved having her on the show and sharing my enthusiasm for these movies with her. I'm still going to have her watch Manos at some point, but again, I got to choose my moment, man. I got to choose my moment. I suppose I could look at her and be like, at least it's not fun in Balloon Land.
Now that song stuck in my head.
Ruthless invaders, a defenseless planet. Battle beyond the stars. A lone youth escapes on a last-ditch mission that begins at the edge of the universe. story of a boy who finds more than he expected.
Make them burn.
And all he can handle.
Does your species have kissing?
Oh, yes. We have that.
Try one. That's a hot dog. It comes from Earth. Do you like it?
There's no dog in this. Soybean meal, niacin, dextrose, and sodium nitrate flavoring.
That's what we call meat back home.
Battle Beyond the Stars. Starring Richard Thomas, George Papard, Robert Vaughn, John Saxon, a battle beyond time, beyond space.
Nice and fire!
That ends in a desperate gamble.
They'll be able to board us.
It won't make any difference.
Get that hatch open! No!
Battle Beyond the Stars.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Monster Kid Radio. Once again, I know I say this every week, and I mean it every single week. Thank you for listening to the show, for downloading the show, maybe throwing us a review or a retweet or a share on Facebook, spreading the word, letting people know about what we do here in our teeny tiny corner of the internet, talking about these classic monster movies, or not so classic monster movies, but specifically about the love that we have for these movies. That's something that I think's really kind of evolved with Monster Kid Radio over the years, that I've really seen the show become less about, let's really get into the nitty gritty and the who's and the what's and the why's and all that of the movies, and really just celebrating the fandom of these movies. Sure, we'll drop some knowledge, we'll go through some trivia and talk about who's in a movie or who directed what or how the movie came to be, but really, Monster Kid Radio is about celebrating these movies, except for Fun in Balloon Land, and those are my favorite episodes to produce. So, Robert, thank you for being part of it. And again, listeners, thank you for being part of the experience as well. Everything you need to know about Monster Kid Radio, you can find on our website at monsterkidradio.net, where you're going to find links to our Twitter page, our Facebook group, our Facebook page, our Discord, our Patreon, our Reddit, our Twitch channel. Everything's over there. If you need anything Monster Kid Radio between episodes, that's where you're going to want to go. And I did say at the top of the show, I'm going to say it again now. You can find our contact information over there. Our voicemail line is 360-524-2484. Emails monsterkidradio@gmail.com. Would love to include some future feedback from you in a future episode of Monster Kid Radio. Also over here, we've got a whole bunch of links to everything that Mark Matzke's up to. Got to, support the guy who's supporting us for the Beta Capsule review, which is one of my favorite things. And we have a few other links to my eBay page. I'm going to start listing some new things on eBay here over the weekend and early next week. Some more monster magazines and other goodies will be available to you there at tinyurl.com/MKR eBay. There's also a couple of new Hawaiian style shirts available. The Monster Kid Radio Flying Saucer logo Hawaiian shirt, and then the Crestwood House Monsters Tribute Hawaiian shirt are available to you as well. Sizes go up to 6X, $35. That includes shipping in the U.S. Get yourself some cool merch and help support Monster Kid Radio along the way. What's coming up next week on the show? There's a couple of things that could happen. One of them is kaiju-sized. One of them smells like Steve Sullivan. I'm not sure which one I'm going to go with yet, especially since I haven't reached out to Steve Sullivan yet. But I got a couple of things that I'd like to do in the next couple of weeks of Monster Kid Radio. Once again, best place to keep up to date with what's coming up on Monster Kid Radio is on Facebook. Our Facebook page and our Facebook group, I try to post announcements there with what's coming up on future episodes of MKR as soon as I figure that out. So stay tuned over there, or just keep subscribed or dialed in or liked or notified or whatever it is, the podcatcher that you use to listen to Monster Kid Radio lets you do to stay on top of everything Monster Kid Radio. Just keep dialed in, because we'll be back again in about 7 days. Until then, remember, Monster Kid Radio is a registered service mark of Monster Kid Radio, LLC. All original content of Monster Kid Radio by Monster Kid Radio, LLC is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 3.0 Unported License. My name is Derek M. Cook. I'll talk to everybody next week when we talk about something with somebody. Ciao.